Okay, well, I've been working in clay for, I don't know, 40 years or something like that. And I started out as a photographer, and I was witnessing a life modeling session. Ran out of film in the old film days. Somebody handed me a piece of clay, and that was it for me. I just thought, oh, this is really interesting. And what I like about it is that it's so foundational, and also it's very plastic, so you can make any kind of shape out of it. Also, it's a way for me to feel a kinship with people from centuries ago, thousands of years ago, who were working in clay. And that was, some of the first art was made as sculptures made out of clay. And I like having that connection with the past. And then I went back to school. I had to go back to undergraduate school because I didn't have an art degree in order to get into graduate school. And then I went to San Jose State and eventually came here for the job at Northern Kentucky University, where I headed the ceramics area for 30 years until I retired.
This new work that you contributed to the NCECA exhibition, Social Recession, this is a piece that I saw at your studio, actually, shortly after it was completed. And Shannon Stratton, who put the show together, kind of put a call out to address the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact of it has and continues to have on social interaction. So this piece seemed to work into that theme quite nicely. As maybe talk about how this piece came to be, and we'll start with that, and then maybe discuss also the techniques and how you created the piece.
So one of the themes that Shannon Stratton was talking about was interdependence and how we need that interdependence. And also she talked about, because of that, knowing that interdependence, that we would have compassion towards other humans and also non-human beings. So when I read that statement, I thought, this piece is perfect for it. My work in general talks about kinship and how we share a lot of strategies for living with other creatures. So on the one hand, we have all this proliferation of different kinds of beings, and a lot of times we focus in on how we are different from others. But also, you can focus in on how we are the same as others. So for example, one of the pieces I've done in the past was all these different animal eyes. So many species share the strategy of being able to see. And also I did all these insect antennas. There's 100,000 species that use antennas to feel and to smell. And they're all a little bit different, but they're all the same in that they are all articulated. So with this piece, which I call Listen, is about hearing and how we all need to listen to each other and to others. So one of the things that I was interested in is how we all have ears. All primates have ears, and they look pretty similar. If you go from individual human to individual human, they all look a little different. So half of these ears are human ears, and half of them are other primates. So there's a chimpanzee, a bonobo, a baboon, a gorilla, and they are all intermixed with the human ears. So I want to show that connection that we have with all primates. And also just talk about how we really need to listen more carefully to others. And I think if we did, that we'd have more respect and more compassion towards others. So that was my primary interest in that. And that's something that has continued throughout my work for the last 20 years.
How did you determine the scale of these ears? Because they're obviously larger than life size. And also, I sense this from being familiar with some of your earlier work, this idea of constellations, or the kind of the grouping of the ears, and how you arrived at that.
So the scale was, I wanted it to be larger than life. I often like to take things out of scale. So sometimes I show things that are, usually very microscopic, but I make them much larger, or things that are larger and I make them smaller. And so the composition of this is very similar to the composition I did for a piece I call Night Sky Spiral, which is about all the deep sky objects. And I like to do things that involve a swirl or a twirl, because I think that that's part of how the universe is structured. These pieces also, because they're made in clay, they're a little bit easier to do bigger, but not too big. So if I wanted to make them this big, there'd be a lot of technical problems. And if I wanted to do them really small, I think they also would not have much impact on the wall. So that's sort of where I came with a piece about this big. And some are smaller and some are bigger. And then when I work with the clay, you'll see that there are different tones to the clay. Some are darker and some are lighter. It's all the same clay, but I fired them to different temperatures, and that makes things go lighter or darker. And I wanted to have that, a variety of skin tones in there. And it's just clay. There's no glaze on that, although there is a very thin wax surface to it, just to make it glisten a little bit more.
And did you work from photographs of the ear, or what did you start with in terms of modeling the ears? How did that?
So the first one I started off with, I ordered a silicone ear from an art supply store, and just to sort of get to know the ear. The ear is a very complex form, I found. I thought it was a fairly difficult form. So the first one's sort of a generic human. But after that, I like to work with individuals. So there's my former studio assistant, Jessica Holtman, is the first ear, and my husband's ear, my ear, Sly's ear, who's taking the photographs now. So different people I know. But I basically had to work with photographs because nobody wants me staring at their ears. My husband got very sort of freaked out whenever he'd see me staring at his ear. So I would have to take photographs from many different points of view to do it, because again, it's a very difficult form. Now, when it came with the other primates, I don't have any apes around my house, so I had to work primarily from photographs, and they're primarily of baby primates, so baby bonobo, a baby baboon, because after a while, primates get all this hair around their ears that the photographs are too hairy. So the babies are less hairy, and so that's what I had to use. And so sometimes I'd have to make up a little bit of parts to it, but hopefully I'm close enough to match an individual.
And do you see this series being extended, or is this kind of a one-off in terms of making this group of ears, or something that you might extend into other installations?
Well, I did make another ear piece that actually just sits on a table, and it's filled with pollen, so not real pollen, but porcelain-made pollen. And that came from, it's called And Then She Realized, because I was listening to a program about how African American women have a lot of maternal mortality. And that's from years and years and years of constant racism. And until I actually heard that program, I didn't really understand completely, probably never will completely, but the effects of racism, that it actually affects our bodies, not just our minds. And so I think of pollen as a metaphor for information, so fertilizing one's mind through the ears. So it's just an ear filled with pollen. So I would like to continue some of that in other pieces. Mm-hmm.